Welcome everybody to Microsoft 365 Train the Trainer Part 5. The next session are my favorite personally because it hits on some of the just a part of running an organization that is oftentimes done poorly and oftentimes is considered a waste of time, and that is running team meetings, managing tasks. And Teams provides, and if you're an EOS provider, by the way, if you like Traction, EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, for those of you who might not know what EOS stands for, if you know EOS, you know what EOS is, but a book called Traction gets into it, but it's really an operational rhythm for your organization. And the next two sessions are going to touch on how Teams and other Microsoft 365 tools can be leveraged to improve the way in which you run meetings, manage tasks, discussion items, etc. So today we're going to talk on setting up some of the meetings, getting in task management, which are two big parts of making your meetings effective. So Nina, take it away with some of the agenda. And then, like I said, you're going to hear some passion and soapbox in my voice because I love this component of 365 as we get into Train the Trainers. Nina.
Yeah, thank you, Nate. Now I knew today was going to be your favorite session. So yeah, please feel free to jump in at any point. Today we're going to be looking at tracking our team agendas and minutes. Typically, with a lot of organizations we work with, this is generally happening through email. Super frustrating as updates come to these agendas, trying to track down what is the latest version of that agenda. So that can get a little bit tricky. We want to show you how you can actually pull all of that into your team's environment. During the meeting, you're probably going through some tasks and specific things that need to be accomplished and assigned to various people. The old, well, I didn't know that I was supposed to do that, so try to get some visibility into that. I know, Nate, your favorite saying is team visibility creates team accountability.
That's right.
So how we could absolutely do that with Microsoft Planner, and also track your personal to-dos as well with Microsoft To Do. And then I wanted to just get a touch on some of the new things that are coming for Planner in 2024. I think a lot of that is pretty exciting stuff. So at the end of the session, we'll have a little quick overview of that and what to expect and when to expect it. All right, so I'm just going to head over to my demo environment. I want to just show you quickly what we're sort of talking about and where we are going to be building towards. Typically, when you've created your team, you get by default the Post tab, which is where the conversations happen, and we touched on that in previous sessions, and also the Files tab, which is where we collaborate on our documents and edit and share and all of that good stuff. If you see across the top here, we've added some additional tabs, and what we're really trying to do there is leverage some of the power of Microsoft 365 and some of the other apps that you're already paying for with your subscription, and pulling that into your team's environment and really getting as much value as possible from that. We generally try to mimic those day-to-day team activities, task management, requests, those types of things. This might look a little bit different depending on how your department or team operates. And so these are just some ideas to kind of get your mind going with what's possible for your team. So typically what we would do is add in a tab for agendas and minutes. So this is the OneNote workbook that's attached to your team. And I'm going to just show you how you can add that in. With new teams, it's added in by default, but the name is a little bit generic, so I'll show you how to change that. We have a standing agenda, which we can just copy and paste, and I'll show you how to set that up. And Nate, maybe you can talk through a little bit of how we run those meetings. The way I have it set up is setting it up by year, and then each meeting will have its own date, and then we'll track that progress during the meeting. The other thing that we'll be touching on today is, as we're going through the meeting and picking up specific tasks that need to be assigned to various people, is making sure that that's logged in Microsoft Planner. I'll talk about the distinction between Microsoft Planner and Microsoft To Do. Planner being more for your team tasks, so I wouldn't typically use Planner for just myself, where To Do is really for your individual, your personal tasks. So we'll talk about that distinction in just a second. So what I'd like to do is head over here to the consulting team. If you're working in the old version of Teams, or the classic version of Teams, as I'll call it, the old version, the classic version of Teams, you would typically only see the Posts and the Files tab. There'll be a little Add a Tab option there, and then you can search for OneNote.
And Nina, as you're doing this, let me chime in as to when is this appropriate? So if you're just having like a one-off meeting, do you need to create a channel and a OneNote notebook for it? No, the answer is no. That's not necessarily what we're suggesting. What for you to think about where this is most applicable, and again, under the context of train the trainer and trying to drive adoption with your organization, is when you have a regular rhythm of meeting. Now that's oftentimes weekly for team departments, different departments in the organization. Sometimes that's maybe monthly for like a strategic or checking in on your quarterly plans. Maybe it's quarterly because you have a quarterly planning rhythm. So it's really in particular, if you think about the department meetings or the functional meetings that you have that have a rhythm to them, because then it's more apt that you're going to have a standing meeting agenda, and you're going to want to be able to capture notes that are permissioned to the people that have access to that team, et cetera. So that's the framework, the frame of mind that I wanted to put some context around as Nina's building this out.
Yeah, so if you did not have that tab at the top, you would then click the plus button, add a OneNote, and you'll see that you usually get a OneNote workbook with that team. You could create a brand new one if you wanted to as well. With new teams, it adds this notes tab at the top by default. It's just a very generic name. I don't particularly like it. So if you right click on it, you have the ability to rename it, and then we can change that from notes to agendas and meetings. Okay, as that's, there we go. So that just makes the notebook just so much easier to see and to navigate towards. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my marketing team. That's the standing agenda that I want to use for the consulting team as well. So I'm just going to highlight this, copy and paste. So here in the consulting team. So it's a good idea to have that standing agenda template somewhere so you can just copy and paste it for your own team. If you hit the little books, it kind of looks like books to me on the left-hand side there. I'm just going to call this standing, agenda, and paste that. So if you open that up again, you could add in different sections. So again, the way I do it is do it by year, but you may want to do it by quarter or whatever description makes the most sense for your team. And then on the add a page team is where we do those individual meetings. So while I have that open, Nate, maybe you just want to touch on some of the ways that we use this.
Yeah, so part of the benefit of this is as your team, there's a team dynamic that happens when you meet on a regular basis, and you don't necessarily have the same standing agenda forever. So ways I look at the standing agenda is to keep everybody in topic, address the most important things that you need to address as a team, but also it allows you to, for instance, sometimes I've seen examples where you have a short-term project. Excuse me, I'm getting a little frog in my throat at the moment, which is great since we're recording, you know what I mean? But maybe you have a short-term project, so you add a standing agenda item for maybe the next 3 months, so you just check in on that to make sure everybody's up to speed, and then and that short-term project's over, well, you pull it off the agenda. Or maybe you want to change the standing agenda long-term, and you can actually update an item to the standing agenda. So each meeting, you're copying it in. So you're using this as the place from which to copy and paste the meeting agenda, but also from which you iterate and adjust and evolve your team and the structure of your meeting over time. That also gives you the ability to, if there's something that you feel is really important for the next meeting, you can copy, and anybody in your team can copy and paste that into the next whatever however you are building your templates out here, like Nina said, into the right year with the right date of the meeting, and you can add something in there that says, hey, this is something I really feel like we need to address in this meeting, and so you can add it to the agenda for when that meeting comes up in the coming week, because that's the most likely frequency in which we're talking about here. So those are some of the nuances of when you're engaging in the standing meeting agenda and using this tool. It gives everyone the flexibility to know where the agenda is and to be able to, contribute to it and or be clear about what the topics are going to be addressed.
Thanks. And from a usability point of view, we also like to add hyperlinks into there. So if you want to reference a document that's in that team, that's a really quick way to have almost like a dashboard. People can just go to the agenda, click on it, it'll take them to all the right documentation and anything else that's supporting that meeting. One quick thing that I wanted to mention here, that I've seen this work really well for internal teams and groups, but another good use case for this is any organizations that have a board of directors directors. That's that kind of email back and forth is very typical of a board of directors, and I've seen this work really well for them as well. So they know anytime they come and access these notes, that it's the most up to date. They don't have to track it down in their email. Very similar to how it works internally as well. So just wanted to mention that really quick. All right, so as we're going through the meeting, there's a couple of items that we want to make sure are allocated to various resources to make sure that that's actually getting done. And so the way to do that in a team setting is really using Microsoft Planner. Now you could go to the Microsoft Planner app and then create the standalone plan there and attach it to the team later. But if you know this planner is going to be a part of this particular team, I would suggest just doing it right here, right now, and then it's automatically attached to the correct team, which in our case is the consulting team. So again, I'm going to head up here to the plus sign to add a tab. You'll see that it's very descriptively called task by planner and to do. We'll talk a little bit more about the naming. That's part of some of the changes coming in 2024. Thank goodness. So I'm going to just choose their tasks by planner and to do. I'd like to create a new plan for this particular team, and we're going to call it consulting tasks, just because tasks is just so incredibly generic. So I'm going to click save. All right. So anybody that's familiar with the old style Kanban board, where like I used to have a whiteboard with post-it notes and kind of, move the post-it notes from category to category or phase to phase. This is very similar to that, although there are different views that you can utilize. So let's say for our consulting tasks, we are busy working on a new governance service. So governance service. And we need to do some planning around this. So I'm going to type that task in there, hit the enter button. You'll see it creates a little card. If I click back on that card, there's a lot of different options there that I can set to the task. So this is obviously the most fun piece of it, is assigning it to other people. So what I'm going to do is sorry, Nate, I'm going to assign this one to you. I'll talk in a second about the different buckets. We can set progress, so not started, in progress, completed, various priorities, especially if this is something urgent, start dates, due dates. If it's a repeating task, we can add that in there, any notes. I can also add in various subtasks to that. So I'm going to put in task 1, task 2, task 3. I have the ability here with the checkbox to show it on the card. So you'll see if I take it off, it just shows the title versus showing the actual subtasks associated with that. I can also put in various comments in here. You'll see that a date and time stamps that. So if it's quite a substantial amount of things that I need to do, I like just kind of keeping track of it there and having it post the date and time. The other thing that's useful there is if there are multiple people working on the same task. So I'm going to assign this to myself as well. And so it's just good for the other people working on that task with me to know where I am with it and what I'm doing. I would say what's one thing that we've run into with class, see if Nate, you're smiling. I would be careful about assigning too many people to one task. What so often happens is I'm done with my piece of it, and then I hit yep, I'm done, it's complete, and then it completes it for everybody else that's been working on the task, and they may or may not actually be finished with it. So right. If there's a substantial amount of team members working on it, I would really recommend just breaking up that task into various tasks instead of trying to combine that all into one. So that's just one sort of little issue that we've run into.
Yeah, Nina, I think part of this gets into some philosophical components, and we've had people run into that problem a lot. But is like if everyone's accountable, no one's accountable. There's some phrases, right, that people might have heard. Yep. So adding multiple people, then there might be confusion about whose responsibility is it to really get these tasks done. In addition to what Nina said, is one person might be able to complete the task for everybody, even though not everyone's not necessarily done. So there is some methodology to employ. Like one of those tasks, you could say, Nina, do this task, yep. Nate, do this other task. So that could be one of the ways to be more clear. It also could be if you had a methodology as part of your organization. So when Nina completes her task, she could go down to the comments and say, hey, I've completed mine, and that time date stamps it and captures it. So there's different ways in which you can manage that if you really feel like multiple people being assigned to a task is critical. But again, just be conscious of that, because unless your team really knows what they're doing and is familiar with this stuff, they're highly likely going to click complete when they're done, and then it completes it for everybody, and that's not really what your intent is. The last thing that I'll say relative to tasks is why I love Planner. And by the way, you're starting to see some. There's a couple things. One is that the new Planner coming to do, as Nina mentioned, like you're seeing that little banner across the top. So that's what we're going to preview here at the end of this session. And then the second thing around using Planner is that it really allows you to avoid the problem that Nina mentioned at the beginning, like I didn't realize I was assigned to this task, or maybe the task is buried in some note that like if you're thinking about your current methodology, how do you clearly identify who's responsible to complete something and when it's due? And so the Planner gives you the opportunity to say, hey, Nina, what's a reasonable amount of time for you to get this task done? A day, 2 weeks, a month? Like, what is it? So let's be clear about that. And then it has, I like to jokingly call it auto nag feature, is when the time is coming due, it'll say, hey, you have tasks coming due. You have tasks coming due. It reminds you, it'll remind you in Teams and email. So I like that, but it removes the need to have tasks documented in your notes, because and then requiring people to find the notes, pull out the task that's assigned to them, put it on their to-do list, and then do it. So a lot of times that's the pain that we've heard from a lot of organizations is, it's the task is documented, but it's in a Word document, or it's in an email that got sent out, or it's in, maybe no one took notes. I mean, maybe there is no record of it, but like trying to capture it and be in the moment, create clarity of the person who's ultimately responsible, typically the department head, and then the person who's then accountable to getting it, or responsible for getting it done, and when is it going to get done, and what information do you need to make sure you're clear on the task that needs to be completed. So I love Planner because it gives you the opportunity to create clarity, and with the individual, as well as it removes the need from the department head to remember that that's a task that needs to be done. Because a lot of the ways in which I used to have to manage this, I also then had to remember the tasks that were assigned to other people, so I could follow up to make sure that the things that I'm accountable for getting done as a department head actually got done. So by putting it in here, it takes the burden of short-term memory off of me as the facilitator or the department head, if that's my role, and it takes the burden of trying to remember that off the person to whom you're assigning that task, because it creates absolute clarity of what that task is, who it's assigned to, and when it's supposed to be done. And that is a huge win from anyone who's had to facilitate and manage a department, especially if you, and even on top of that, if you end up having to manage maybe multiple teams or cross-functional teams. This is a huge win across the board. Again, I told you that was my soapbox, so I'm going to step off of it now.
And for someone who used to always track this in an Excel worksheet, the Excel worksheet doesn't nag me, which I kind of need, and I'm constantly getting nagged anyway, because apparently I have a whole lot of stuff overdue. All right, so really quick, I just wanted to talk about the buckets up here. So those categories that I was referring to earlier, this again could be anything that makes sense for your team or department. I would kind of sit down with them and figure out what format would make the most sense. For this particular example, we do these initiatives by quarter. So we would typically do Q1 initiatives, Q2, Q3, etc. And then if we don't get to it during that quarter, that card would then be moved off to a different one. So let's say for Q1, we want to make sure the governance service planning is being done in Q1. And then I'll add one here in Q2 for governance service. And this would be a pilot project, for example. All right. This one I'm just fully going to assign to you, Nate. Sorry. So I could move these around depending on the different requirements. And again, this might look slightly different for your team or your organization depending on your requirements. There's a couple of different views here as well that I really like. So at the moment, it's basically grouped by bucket. I can also group and see who it's been assigned to, for example, progress, due date. There's labels as well, priorities. So there's a lot of different ways that you could view that information. One of the ones I see used quite a bit are under the filter. So this will hide some of the, especially if it's a really extensive plan, there's a lot of different steps, a lot of different tasks, and it feels kind of a little overwhelming. It's really good to use the filter. So I could maybe look at stuff that's only assigned to myself or is assigned to a specific person, or if you've already designed that plan ahead of time for the entire year and there's certain items that are not yet assigned. I see this one used quite a bit as well, is checking to see which tasks have not been assigned yet. The other filters are by date, priority, bucket, etc.
And Nina, as you're looking at that, one of the things I like to, where I've seen people, I think, build structure that is a bit redundant, is that they build structure that could just be done through a filter or by the group by drop down. So instead of having like some people I've seen build buckets for people. It's like, well, if you assign the person, then you don't need to build a bucket for the person because you can just filter by and group by the person. So that's what I mean by that, is that be aware. The reason why those filters are really handy and we want to create awareness around them is because you don't necessarily have to build buckets or build other structure when those things are already there for you. So use the structure for something that isn't in that filter or in that group by section to your advantage.
Yeah, and just a really quick one here. There's some of the other views. There's a chart view, so you can kind of track stuff in a more visual way, and a schedule view. Personally, I'm not crazy about the schedule view, so I'm really excited about some of the new changes coming to Planner, and I'll kind of talk about that a little bit later as well. For us personally, we use the board one the most. Oh, there's one other one, which is viewing all the tasks in a list view as well. So that's also quite a useful view. I would say list and board are probably the two most useful views. So yeah, that's just a really quick overview of Microsoft Planner. And then the next question I usually get when we're doing these trading sessions is, what if I sit on multiple teams and they're all assigning tasks to me from these various groups or departments? How do I see that at a glance? That's not the only issue, though. There's a couple other things that I want to mention here, because there's tasks and requests coming from a lot of different places. So if we go back here to the marketing team, so maybe somebody sent me a message and they were, asking something specific they wanted me to do. How do I remember that there's a task attached to that request in a chat? So if I go ahead here to the little breadcrumbs and more actions, I can, where's my task? There, create a task. And I can create a task based off of that chat. I can just maybe make this my new task. So there's tasks coming in from chats and conversations. So that's one place. One of the other places that tasks are typically coming in is through your email, correct? So if I have an email here, I can also, if I look at the little task button here on the left-hand side, I could drag this over here to the task and I can create an Outlook task. So that's another way that I could remind myself that there's something that I need to do. So I'm going to hit save and close there. The other thing that I use quite frequently, and I think, Nate, so do you, is this flag for follow-up option. So I'm getting an email and I know that there's some stuff that I need to do, and so I just hit that little flag. So now I'm trying to track stuff coming from Microsoft Planner. I might be on multiple teams, so there could be 2 or 3 different planners involved in all of that. I have tasks that I created from a chat. There's Outlook tasks that I've, as things are coming in, and there's flag for follow-up. By this time, people's hair is standing on end. Like, how do I keep track of all of that in one place? So this is now getting to Nate's favorite. As you can see, he's smiling about it. So this is where I want to talk a little bit about how Microsoft Planner and To-Do really work together. So I'm going to go ahead here to the left bottom. I'm going to show you various ways to access it. If I go and I add the To-Do app in here, so if you hit the little breadcrumbs here, you'll see that if you're not seeing it there, just search for Tasks by Planner and To-Do. That name will be changing because it is a little confusing. I do know that. I hear that all the time, but for now it's called Tasks by Planner and To-Do. What I'm going to do is just right click and hit the pin there so we can make sure that it stays on that left bar. And as you can see from this, I can see a list of all my tasks. So any tasks that were created from Outlook or from the chat. And I can also see all of the planner tasks that I am involved in and what has been assigned to me. So I'm not crazy, quite honestly, about this view myself. I generally do prefer to get the desktop version of the To-Do app. So you can just download that from whatever app store. Nate and I both have this on our phones as well. So when we get those 3 a.m. in the morning wake up and I forgot something, instead of trying to email myself in the dark, I can just add it to my to-do app as well. So a couple of things that I want to point out here. If I go over to assign to me, I can see from all the various planners across all the various teams, all the tasks that have been assigned to me. I can also see any emails that I flagged. And the tasks here are anything coming from either the chats that I created the task from, or Outlook tasks. Just below this line here, I can create my own custom lists as well. So if there's high priority items, even personal tasks, remember to buy milk on the way home today, there's stuff with the kids' school, I can add all of that into one app to rule them all. Sorry about the Lord of the Rings reference there. But I find it it took me a little while, I will be honest, because I am pretty married to my notebook, and I've always been doing my to-dos in my notebook, and it took me a while to figure out for myself how this would work best. One tip that I can give here is that as my morning starts, I kind of go through these lists, and then when I hit it there, I would say add to my day. So I know exactly what I'm going to be doing, whether it's a flagged email, whether it's something off of a custom list, or maybe something assigned to me. I just hit the add to my day. So I kind of go through all of these things. Add to my day. So if I go to my day, this is just how I use it, and everybody's kind of different. I'll kind of sort them in order, so I know which ones I want to tackle first, and I kind of just really work through that list throughout the day. So that's how I use it. Nate, you probably have your own tips and tricks.
That you went through it really well. I think that sometimes there's two things that I'll say is that all those lists on the side, you can actually, for instance, like Nina has the all list there, the flagged email. Sometimes you can turn on or off whether or not you want to see those lists, and you can do that in to-do settings. So there's something, as Nina's showing you. So this is where you can kind of customize what that looks like. You can smart lists, they're right there, turning those on. I like turning all those on. There's also, if you scroll down a little bit, like connected apps like Planner, also flagged email. So that is pulling in all those things in one spot. You can turn those on or off depending on your personal preference. And that segues really to this is a very personal thing. And so meaning that like the way people use Outlook is very personal. Some people like subfolders, some people don't. Some people like flagged emails, some people don't. And so it's really the ultimate thing is to allow you as an individual to only touch something. Like if it's a task, assign it as a task, right? So as opposed to like what I used to do is mark it unread, right? So now I'd have a bunch of emails in my inbox that were unread because I haven't read them, and a bunch of emails in my inbox that were unread because I actually am trying to tell myself that this is something I need to do. And so I started flagging emails, et cetera. And so one of the things that a tip for me is I learned that if it's a task that if someone's going to get upset with me, if I don't get it done or if I don't reply, I do my best. I'm not perfect at this. I do my best to make it a task. I either reply in the moment or I make it a task. So it's something that I know I need to do. If it's something that's like I read it and it's an article that's interesting, like, oh, that's interesting. Like I might find that I want to read that later. I'll flag it, right? And so then I flag it because that's something that I want to do later. But if I don't do it and I don't get to it, then no one's going to be upset with me. So the things that I need to do, task. The things that I might want to do or I might want to get to, I might find interesting, but I don't have the time to do it now, then I'll flag them. So I know that basically anything in my inbox that's flagged is not important. And so that's just, again, way I've learned to do it. And then the last thing I'll say relative to this whole concept is, and again, bringing it back to driving adoption, is that what we have found is that because of the power of to-do, as Nina talked about, how you can, instead of me as an individual having to go to all these different teams to find all the different tasks I might be assigned to across the different teams, I can either use the task by planner and to-do in Teams, as Nina mentioned, or I can use the to-do app. And that allows me to consolidate all those action items into one spot. That's super powerful. So it saves your team's time. So they're not having to try and filter and find and search for the things that they're assigned to do. They can spend more time doing the things that they're assigned to do. And I think that's going back to the way, again, not trying to kick anybody in the shins here, but I know the way we used to do some of these things, and I still don't think we're perfect at this by any means, is that some teams that I was on would assign stuff in notes. Some teams that I was on would assign stuff in an Excel spreadsheet, like Nina mentioned. Some people might not do anything. Might send out an email, and the email might have an action item that I'm assigned to. So again, and sometimes these are things that I was assigning to myself, and I would send myself an email that I mark on red and then I'd forget about, or I'd put it in my OneNote notebook that I could get to from my phone, and then some of my notes were notes and some of my notes were actions. So I created a bunch of confusion for myself. If any of this is resonating with people, like, I feel you, right? Because this is what I've seen a lot of leaders and organizations in particular really struggle with, because they've got all these things coming at them from all the different places, including their own head, and they don't have a place to consolidate those actions. And so planner and to-do, planner if it's a team, if it's a team action, team visibility, or to-do if it's just an individual one, but then to-do brings it all together. And I think as a segue, Nina, so my point in all of that is, as well, is that if you are just one of your teams in your organization uses this methodology, that's good. But if you're a member, if you have members of your team that sit on multiple teams and the other teams aren't doing the same thing, well, you're not really optimizing the adoption and the ways in which you can get full benefit from these tools and the way they operate. So that's where I would challenge you from an adoption perspective, is think about all the different departments in your organization and how they run their team meetings and how they're assigning tasks. Because if they're not doing it consistently, you're not setting your team up for success in the best way possible with the tools that you're already paying for. So that's really my last kind of tag on using teams and using teams for meetings and action items, is because it really gets everyone in your organization managing their tasks, or at least being able to have visibility to their tasks in the same way, as opposed to having to hunt down all the different tasks that they're assigned to do. So now I'll be quiet again. I keep getting on my soapbox, and I'm sorry.
That's okay. So yeah, really quickly, I just wanted to mention again just the ways that you can access to do, because I, when I do training, it feels a little confusing with all the different names. So yeah, adding it over on the left-hand side here with tasks by planner and to do is one way of doing it. You can obviously go up here to the waffle and then add the to do app there. Again, I like to download the desktop version. I feel that there's just, having create different backgrounds for my different lists helps me visually know what I'm working with. Microsoft is also very intentional about combining this into Outlook. So if you go open up Outlook, you'll see the little to-do check markers here on the left-hand side. So that would be another way to actually view all of that information. So I can tell the same thing here. I can see, again, what's assigned to me across all the different plans, what's flagged, tasks, etc. So there are various ways of accessing to-do, and I just wanted to highlight that really quickly. All right, so with some limited time available, I just wanted to quickly touch on some of the changes coming to Microsoft Planner in 2024. I wanted to quickly open this up. And 1 second. All right. So as you probably noticed as we were going through this, it's, there's all these different names floating about. This is one of the biggest frustrations we've seen so far when we do this training, is like, there's planner. Okay, planner is for teams. To do, that's more for my personal individual planning. Then there's also Microsoft Project. And then when you're adding it in Microsoft Teams, as you saw, the name was a little confusing. It was tasks by planner and to do. So eventually I can just see, total confusion when I'm trying to train it, because I felt it as well when I was learning this stuff as well. So one of the biggest changes coming to Microsoft Planner 2024 is really a more unified experience. So Microsoft Planner, Microsoft To Do, and Microsoft Project, which is obviously a completely standalone product right now with its own licensing costs attached to it. These will all be unified under one name, Microsoft Planner. Thank goodness. So that's one of the biggest changes. There's a couple of other really cool features coming as well. So really, Microsoft Planner with that unified access will have a single pane of glass for team tasks, Outlook tasks, planner tasks, for any of you out there using Loop tasks, Microsoft Project. So everything will essentially be in one app, also across all the different teams and planners that you are a part of as well. So there will be two different planner versions. The basic version will be included in Microsoft Teams, will be very similar to what we just showed you now. The big difference is that it won't be called Tasks by Planner and To Do anymore. It will just be called Microsoft Planner, and it will have both your team and individual tasks in one app. So the basic version will also functionally be very similar to what we just showed you with the list and the board view and adding kind of tasks in there. The premium version, which really includes a lot more of the Microsoft project management features, there will be an additional cost attached to that, kind of like we have now with Teams and Teams Premium. As of yesterday, when I was checking, I don't have a definitive answer on what that cost will be. We'll probably find out soon enough. This will include some premium project management features that I'll highlight in a second, and it will be fully integrated with a Copilot, which is obviously Microsoft's AI. So for those of you who do have Copilot for 365, you'll be fully able to use that with Planner as well in the premium version. So a couple of advanced project management features that are going to be included, which I'm super excited about, will be goal setting and the ability to do dependencies and Gantt charts. So as of now with Microsoft Planner, that's one of the biggest drawbacks we've seen, is that tasks are completely standalone. There's no dependencies built in there. So having the ability to complete one before you're able to continue on to the next, that will all be changing as Microsoft project features are integrated heavily into Planner. As in the screenshot there, I'm very excited about the Gantt chart piece, as you know, Nate. One of the other views that will be added in here is a people view. So you'll be able to load balance those tasks across your team. I think this is great if you're doing any kind of capacity planning to make sure that the load is pretty balanced amongst your team members and not one person ending up with everything and other people kind of getting through with doing nothing. So that would be super useful. There's also some customization included, so you'd be able to add in additional custom fields into those tasks as you need. So that's a pretty good one as well, with different field types as well, number, date, etc. So I think that will be pretty exciting. And then, yeah, the big thing, as we know, Microsoft's big push with AI is Copilot. So there'll be full integration with Copilot. So things that you'll be able to do is say to Copilot, for example, what steps do I need for a successful product launch? And Copilot will set out a template with, you know, all the different steps that you would need to complete, so that you can then tweak and customize for your specific needs. So I think that that's going to be pretty powerful. Lastly, the rollout timeline. So early 2024, so probably soon, the new Planner app will be available in Teams. So that will be generally available. So that is what I just mentioned. The Tasks by Planner and the To-Do app will be renamed in Planner. And that will be, but for now, it will only be available in Teams. However, later in 2024, the web experience, so the actual web app for Planner will be more generally available. And some of those Microsoft project features will be available and pulled into the premium version of that. So I think that that's just good to know what to expect. We haven't seen a lot of changes with Planner and To-Do in the last couple of years, so this is a really big change coming down the pipeline.
Yeah, and I'm excited about that for a number of reasons. One, because like you said, Nina, if you access Planner in Teams, it's called Task by Planner and To Do. If you access Planner in the browser, it's actually called Planner, but it's the exact same thing. So like it's just confusing. So I'm excited for that consolidation. And we kind of knew that Microsoft was in this consolidation phase. We just had no idea when they were going to actually get to it. And I would imagine from a costing perspective, because like you said, that data is not available. It's probably similar that if you have Microsoft Project today, if you're paying for Microsoft Project today, my guess is that it's going to be about the same price to do the premium version of this, because that's really the features that it's integrating. So it'll be around that ballpark would be my guess. So for those of you who are thinking or planning for it, if you're already using Microsoft Planner, it's probably just going to then integrate, like Nina mentioned here, later in 2024. But if you're not sure what those costs are, it's probably, if we looked up Microsoft Project, it's probably about where it's going to be from a user. And I don't know what that number is off the top of my head, because we don't do a lot of Microsoft Project stuff with most of our clients. But that'll be cool. With this capability, we might see more of it for sure.
Well, that wraps it up from my side, Nate. I don't know if there's any questions.
Well, let's turn it to Stephanie and see if there are any questions. But again, stay tuned for next time. We're going to hit on a couple other aspects of running a team meeting, but we're going to get into how Microsoft Lists, Forms, some of the other capabilities inside of running a team. That again, there's some EOS components there that we'll touch on as well. But this is a huge part of driving adoption, because at least, again, the message that we typically try and deliver is that if you, as the someone inside the organization that's responsible for driving adoption, if you build this into your weekly department meeting rhythm or every other week or whatever it is, hopefully weekly, because that's what most organizations do if they're running department meetings. This at least gives you once a week opportunity to point everyone into Teams. You start showing them Teams, you can start showing them the agenda notes, you can start showing them document collaboration, you can start showing them the tasks. And next time we're going to get into other components that are also very helpful to make sure that it makes it easier for you to operate team meetings as well as drive adoption across your organization. So stay tuned for next month. There's no questions at the moment, so we will sign off. Thank you very much for joining live or watching after the fact, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
From my side too.
Thanks, Tina.